iTnews is hosting our State of Security Breakfast Roadshow 2026 in Melbourne on September 10, proudly sponsored by CoreView, Delinea and Huntress. Join us and executives from end-user organisations as we explore the key trends, challenges and opportunities identified in our State of Security 2026 report that are shaping Australia's cybersecurity landscape and operations. Attendance is complimentary for qualified end-user technology and security professionals. Follow the link in the description to register your interest or visit itnews.com.au. Hello and welcome to the IT News podcast. Our guest this fortnight is Chris Doyle, the CIO for non-bank lender Finance One. Finance One, which is part of the Investor Central Group, is implementing its first AI strategy outline and framework, with the aim of finding operational efficiencies, improving service, and moving faster with new products. Join us as Chris discusses the company's approach to AI, as well as its broader technology strategy and approach, where harmonisation, modernisation, and automation are key themes.
Finance One is a non-bank lender and it's actually part of Investor Central Group. But the Finance One brand is the one that's known in the market and therefore that's what we refer to ourselves as Finance One. Investor Central Group incorporates Investor Central, where we manage investments from high net worth individuals that fuel and provide capital to the lending business. Finance One is the lending business. And we then have Strategic Collections and Commercial Credit Control, which are two collections businesses. Commercial Credit Control is where we service customers by managing credit for them. And Strategic Collections is where we purchase debt, where we own the debt, and then we manage the collection against that debt ourselves. So those are the four main parts of the business. Strategically, obviously, financial organizations want to become more efficient and grow and generate a larger portfolio and greater returns. As obviously shareholder return is part of that. But the focus for us has always been the subprime sector. We started out of Townsville. We've got presence across Australia. Our main branches are in Townsville, Brisbane and the Gold Coast here, but we have people based in all the major cities, so Australia wide. And we try to make sure that all Australians have access to credit. So we will take on loans or situations that others don't. That was originally consumer based and we've got more of a commercial arm coming through now. And as we enhance our capabilities and get more efficient and have more access to capital, we find other opportunities. So we're finding some really interesting opportunities in the commercial space for organizations that find it difficult to work with the large banks because their processes are too slow or their controls are too onerous to enable them to be dynamic. I think we all know that businesses are moving faster, technology is moving faster. And yes, those banks have large technology teams and large investments, but their controls and their processes still stifle lots of businesses. So that's something that we're focusing on at the moment and growing out more. So when it comes to the technology strategy, Strategic Collections and Commercial Credit Control are businesses that we acquired a few years back. And when I joined, I built out the integration frameworks. What are the capabilities of those businesses? How do they map to our capabilities? What's all the work we have to do to align the processes and the technology and bring that together? Harmonisation is a big theme for what we do because with the collections tools, we have one set of systems for Finance One and a different set of systems for those two collections businesses. And we want to make sure that we have the benefits of common process and the benefits of common data without taking away the unique skills those different businesses have to service their sectors. Harmonisation is one piece. Modernisation, of course, is key. This is greatly improved. We have a lot of legacy environment where we've built applications, perhaps not in the most effective way over time historically. And we've done a lot of unbundling of code, undoing of direct integrations and making things more asynchronous so that we can have more robust processes and then increasing our performance by moving those things into the cloud. So undoing a lot of the legacy work that we've got. And then looking forward, I mentioned new products. So we're supporting the ambition of the business to build new products and move into new sectors. And obviously the ubiquitous automation and AI discussion comes in. We want to do these things. How do you do that? Well, rather than focusing on individual technologies, you need to have those things bolted into your capability so that you understand the capability, you understand the risks, and you understand how to help the business move faster. At an aggregate level, it will become cost of capital. When we compete against the big banks, their massive advantage is really good cost of capital. And we being a smaller business, we can't hit the same customers and be in the same sector as them, really. We can brush up against it, but can't really compete. And if we don't make sure that we're efficient and others overtake us, they're going to provide cheaper loans, which means they're going to get access to the customers that we can't get access to. So we've got to make sure that we have those sorts of tools so we can support product development.
Okay, cool. So a fair bit to unpack there, but you mentioned AI and automation. Are you able to just talk at a broad level what Finance One's approach is with AI and maybe where the responsibility sits internally and who's driving that strategic direction?
Yes, absolutely. I think the first place to start is there's just broad misconception about what AI is. The modern media, the modern zeitgeist is everything LLM based is AI. Okay, well, yes, that's not incorrect because large language models are the thing that's the modern genesis of AI, but process automation has been there for a long time. Your RPA tools have been there. Your process automation tools have been there. Machine learning capability has been there. And now you've just seen this point where those things are evolving to a place where it's actually getting towards the Turing test type level and people are using it and going, oh, I can get answers out of this where it's making more sense to me. And so it becomes a utility for the consumer and suddenly the media are super, super excited about it. When looking at automations, it's not one sledgehammer to crack a nut. It's what different types of tools have I got available to me? And there's plenty of vendors of different levels of maturity, different types of solutions that can solve your problems. One place to start is that disambiguation around what AI is. That's something that I've been directly involved in, working with the CEO and the executive to articulate what it is that we're actually dealing with. And then when looking to then use these tools, how do you select them? How do you implement them? How do you make them successful? The typical excitement is the executive, the owners, the shareholders, or the board look at this new technology and go, this is a step change. We can radically change the business. And the easy answer is we can do twice as much with the same people, or we can do the same amount with half the amount of people. And that's the easy answer. But that isn't a market leading or differentiating way of thinking. If we can think that, everybody else can think that. And so if you just go ahead on the basis of this, you're just trying to keep up. It's a race straight to the bottom. So when you're talking about these tools, what processes are we looking to implement? What products are we looking to build? What customer experience do we want to have out of this? And when you look at the risks that are created both internally from putting agents in place and not understanding the attack vectors that can then be made available to attackers, also the external threats that are increasing in speed, etc., you've got to be sufficiently circumspect to not walk straight through into the traps, but you also don't want to be at the back being too cautious because then you're not going to learn enough and then you're definitely not going to achieve the sorts of returns and outcomes that you're looking for. So again, these are the conversations that I'm involved directly in and driving. I've recently completed the AI strategy outline and the AI framework that we want to pursue and how we're going to start to restructure the organization to meet the needs of this. And that's something that I'm directly involved in. And those conversations are going well. They're positive. We've been running experimentations, all the different types of using LLMs, putting in a platform for managing LLM access and having the appropriate subscriptions and seeing visibility of that centrally so that we can enable all the staff to use those things, starting to enable areas of the business that have identified uses for agents and supporting them in how to build agents that are effective, and obviously in code. So we're looking at our process criticality and where we can use vibe coding to actually enable business units to start to influence processes that typically don't get to the top of the priority stack. And technology aren't going to build them. It's like, well, if you can do something with that, then let's help you do that. And then with the more critical processes, the real challenge is how do we accelerate the development process? We do have an internal software development team. How do we make sure they're able to build code faster, but maintain the competency, maintain the human in the loop to make sure that those things work effectively? So all of those things are happening in parallel, and I'm involved in all of them.
How are you looking at that in terms of creating a low code, no code type environment that the business is able to use but isn't going to create more work for you? Because when you look across all the people online doing the various experiments and bake-offs between these different vibe coding systems, the results are quite variable. And
Yes.
Whether the tool is able to create something useful that actually works out of the box or create something with more problems in the code that have to be fixed later and require knowledge to be fixed later. The jury is a bit out on that, I think.
Yes, or typically it's not a technology problem, it's a people problem. That's always been the case in my experience. That saying just keeps coming up more and more in conversations and other people that are raising it more and more. It's always been possible to buy a forms application, create a form, put some workflow behind it and stick something out onto the web. It's always been possible to take Excel and build macros around Excel and load important data into it and put calculations against it and start using it to run core processes. These things have always been there. This just enables more people to do those things faster. The way that we're approaching this is the process criticality. We want to make sure that people aren't just using their credit card to buy whichever platform that they've got. We try not to be a blocker. We try to enable the business rather than block them with the older style formal constraints. But For things like this, we have Area in place, which is our access point where we control the access to the major LLMs. So we use multiple major LLMs. That's run through Area, and so people can use that, and that's our control point. We have Lovable as a vibe coding platform, which it's well known and people are using it. It may not be the most mature tool, but everyone's learning as we go. We can vibe code for that for lower criticality processes, but it doesn't have the proper environment management, the promotion management, and the kind of enterprise controls that you really need to build something more robust. So that's something that we've learned. We can put minor processes onto that, but not the major processes. We put these tools in place and make them available. And then it comes down to your low risk, medium risk, high risk, stratified by volume. So if you've got a low risk process that's low volume, just go and build something. It's fine, because that sort of process is owned by a manager or owned in a team. And if that team is going to get nothing built by technology, because technology team's quite expensive internally to build things for you, then use it just in the same way that you'd use Excel. You can do that because it's isolated data, isolated process, off you go. Obviously, your core processes talk to your core platforms. They access regulated data. You've got to make sure that's managed really effectively. And we're looking at building the guardrails around that, because that's a real challenge. When you're wanting to use agentic systems to improve both the volume and the quality of the code in parallel, because it can't be just one or the other, you've got to do both, there then come a number of approaches, constraints, tools that have to be thought about. And that's something that we're looking at very avidly and starting to move down that path, but no one's got all the answers. There's plenty of discussion. I was watching some content from Google DeepMind recently, which talked about exactly that. How do you manage this explosion in the volume of code? And then you have that grey area in the middle, which is your medium criticality processes, which you need to look after them, but you don't want to let free rein, but also you don't want to constrain them. And to us, if we can build out some of these core processes in a way where we can productionize high volume code building into our production environment, that means we know how to do it properly. And then we're able to address that middle section, because that'll be a watered down version of the full thing. I think that approach is going to work better for us than trying to build some kind of middle ground and then trying to make it more rigorous afterwards.
So should talk about Icana AI. Where does this fit into it? I presume it's in the higher area, particularly being in the collections business and relating to a lot of things that financial organizations care about. So this kind of intersection between, I guess, CX and NPS and hardship. Interested in how it came about, how you were introduced to it?
How I was introduced to it, that's a good question. You're throwing my mind back. There is what you might call an industry facilitator or a sales pipeline, it's called Strategy Mix, and they're really interesting. So they find vendors with interesting products. I get the emails come through every week or two saying, here's some interesting stuff that we're looking at. And I spotted this Call Coach one as one of them, improving compliance and engagement on contact centers. Icana Call Coach is an advanced AI call analysis engine, which we want to use for the different parts of the business that can benefit from that. We have somewhere north of 100 contact center agents working in the collection space. We've got other customer service and other roles too, but the bulk of people are on the phone is those contact centers. And we want all of them to have access to that capability. But it's not one common process. You've got the people who manage the collections against our loans, people who manage collections. So we work with telcos, energy companies, finance companies, and we'll answer the phone as that company. And so there's a different process there where we have constraints from them. And then we have debt that we purchase, which we own, but comes from another organization. So each of those areas has a different process. So we want to make sure that we offer the capability, but that we tailor it to those different areas so that they don't end up losing their individual requirements. The kind of proposition was we're using a multi-LLM analysis model, which you can use in a contact center. So that's very interesting straight away. So you get the opportunity to get the intelligence, but you're not constrained to just one provider. So you don't have this issue of one model changing and everything suddenly changing. You have an abstracted layer that helps you manage that. Secondly, and this is actually really the key thing, is it's a post-processing activity. If you're trying to analyze a call in real time to do the sentiment analysis, that's really generally got to be part of your contact center tool, and it's got to work with your phone system. If you take another platform and it's not from that vendor, or it's not got a really proper integration that's ready to go and work real time, you can't just take something and just bolt it on. It's extremely difficult to do that. And also that then starts to change the process of the caller, because they're looking at the information that's coming through. They can see the transcription, they can see the sentiment analysis, they can see all of these things. Now, those things are fabulous, and those are available in most of the core platforms that you now have. We have some of those elements in Dialpad too, so those things are there. But this is before Dialpad existed for us. We were on TCN, which is just the old call system. And we have TCN in one business and 3CX in another business, because it's two different businesses. We've got two different core systems. They're both quite basic. And someone's coming along and saying, I have a post-processing multi-LLM model tool that you can use, and we can just suck all the phone calls out of your system and give you back the analysis. Fantastic. Tell me more. The post-processing part's really important because it doesn't interfere with the process. And then the third part is, well, how complex is it to then implement? And that's the other element of the post-processing. It's super easy to implement it. We take all the phone calls that have been stored, and we want conversations, not just calls. We run about 2,000 calls a day, 10,000 calls a week, but we want conversations. We made a cutoff, I think, at about 60 seconds, where we say if it's lower than 60 seconds, it's generally just a query, not a conversation. So we're not really looking at that in terms of quality. If it's above 60 seconds, then we want to process it. And that cuts out quite a significant chunk of the calls. All the ones that are conversations, we then compress them, put them into an S3 bucket, and Ikana picks it up, processes it, gives us the information back, and we don't need to store those outside of our system. That's a secure transmission process, and we don't store them as well. Our AI vendor is not storing the information. So it's within our ecosystem. They just process it and give it straight back to us.
Do you want to talk about just what sentiment you're looking for and what kind of indicators that the tool is really helping to determine that help either your regulatory or your business or operations?
Yes. In the collections calls, they're sometimes quite difficult calls because you're dealing with people who are often at a sensitive point. It's a difficult conversation. You're asking them to pay a debt that they have, whether that's your debt or someone else's debt. That's not an easy conversation. And if you don't take the responsibility seriously around having a good customer focus, but also your regulatory obligations, then you can cause really negative outcomes for the customer and you can have a very poor culture internally. And so when you're in the collection space, you're looking for both sides of the conversation and you're looking to make sure there's sufficient empathy from the individual who's making the call, and you're looking for any signs of distress on the other side of the call. The key elements are negotiation, discovery, communication, and tone of voice. Those are the things that it's looking for. And those are what you might say are the soft skills, and they're the core standard skills that Ikana provides as call coach. And then we are able to add custom constraints or custom requirements, which are things like hardship. Hardship is a regulated process where if somebody meets the threshold for raising that they might have challenges, they don't need to use the word hardship. Or how do you interpret which words they're using to say whether they're in financial distress? And another element is credit cards. So we take payments, and we've got to make sure that we are stripping out the credit card information, and that's not stored anywhere. And the call record doesn't have that, and it doesn't come out in the report either. So we have this semantic soft skill layer, and then we have a harder layer of specific things that we ask for.
And it sounded like from when you were describing it before that you have sentiment analysis in two ways now, both in the call system and also in this post process as well. Is that correct? Or are you still doing most of the sentiment after the call's kind of wrapped up?
We do it after. What we're able to do, and that's so what's the business case and what are the key reasons for having the system? Well, when you don't have the ability to have an automated tool check all of your phone calls, if you wanted to listen to all the phone calls to check them, you'd have half of your workforce doing that. It's just not feasible. You have a QA team or quality personnel who sample calls. Now, occasionally, somebody might raise a particular call being an issue, and therefore that's fed to the quality team and they'll look at that particular one, but that's not a consistent process. And so the target was, are we able to review 2% of calls? But even that, functionally, that's generous because the QA team is not just doing that all the time, they have other responsibilities as well. So you aim for 2%. With this tool, we're able to take every call and process all of them and get the answers back. So where does the value then start to come in? Well, we do it overnight processing. It's not exactly a batch job, but it's an overnight style processing. And then the data comes straight back. It's made available in dashboards online, and the reports come straight through to the team leaders. And so when the team leader comes in the morning, before they might have a QA meeting once a week or once a month with what they've managed to identify. Whereas now it's, these are the phone calls you should be focusing on from yesterday, positive and negative. Where have there been a real challenge? And where has somebody performed really, really well? So what are the problems? Obviously, you want to take the negative feedback and improve. That's what coaching is all about. But if you're spending all of your time going, we now know all the things that you did wrong, and every day you're bashing people over the head with it, yes, they're going to improve, but it's not necessarily the most positive process. So there's also, these are the calls where people have done really well, and not just directly for the individual, you can do that for the team and showcase this is a really good example of how to deal with a particular issue. That comes through every day, and the team leader is able to look at that and say, okay, this is the feedback that I've got straight away. Then to improve the tool, there's calibration. So you have these ones that come through. The team leaders get, say, they've got a team of 5 people. They get 5 or 10 calls today. These are ones you should look at. They know that those are going to be useful calls. So instead of looking at a sample of stuff that may or may not be useful, they're much more willing to spend that time to look at the calls because they know they're going to be useful. And that then gives the opportunity to coach the team, but also then to provide the feedback to the AI model where things have not been as accurate as they might be.
Are there any other key outcomes you'd want to raise in terms of the way that the tool, because it's been in place now for how long? About 2 years almost.
Year and a half. Yeah, just over a year
yeah.
and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the business case ROI, people in technology are generally very excited about ROI, because if they can prove the ROI numbers, then people say yes, and then we get to implement the toys and we get to play with the toys. But it can be difficult to prove ROI. Again, this is why businesses, not just technology, leap to the can we make efficiency savings, because it's hard numbers that you can prove. And so that makes it easy to get the approval to do the thing. The first step in this is it's a cost of doing business. We're a highly regulated business. These are sensitive phone calls. And the hardship process in particular is something that the regulators are very keen on, because they want to make sure that predatory lenders or predatory organizations are not out there causing pain. And things like robo-debt crisis and those things that have happened give the industry a bad name. So there's a lot of supervision of this sort of process. So it's a cost of doing business. We need something like this. We're not looking at 98% plus of our phone calls. We really need that to be in place. That justifies itself. That's enough to get over the barrier for investment. The return in quality and compliance for the spend is absolutely fabulous. The second step is there are many tangible benefits, but how easy are they to measure? What we can see is greatly increased levels of coaching, which lead to better customer feedback, which is great for sales and marketing, etc., and also to us to feel that we're doing a good job, but also more money collected. So better coaching, more accurate feedback, more improved skills, we collect more money, so we're more effective. So it has a very clear link, but it's difficult to measure because it's not just that by itself that causes the increase in the dollars collected. So it's an indirect measure. And so we wanted to make sure we sold it on the compliance piece, and that's how we did it, but we can see the improvement in qualities. There are some really tangible double-digit percentage improvements in compliance, in engagement, and those things do flow through to the revenue.
The softer results you're talking about are good as well, I think, in terms of being able to identify calls that create lessons in terms of how they were handled. That contributes to the knowledge base, that contributes to raising the general level of staff and being able to handle a broader variety of situations.
There's a third level too, which is upskilling and retention. When somebody comes in to join the business and you're on a reasonable sized floor of people, your team leader directly influences the standard and the process that you're going to follow. But if we can make sure that there's a common approach to that, and there's visibility of it, and everyone's learning the best lessons across all of those teams, then you have a much better upskilling process. And so time to value is better when somebody joins, and the transparency and the feedback loops help promote a positive culture. So your retention's higher. You have better upskilling, happier people on the floor doing the work, and better retention. And I think we all should know that retention is important for managing your costs, because there's a massive hidden cost of the constant recruitment to replace people.
Is there anything else you wanted to get across or you think we've missed?
Yeah, one more thing. We talked about the fact it's post-processing.
Yes.
And we talked about the different businesses and the different systems that are in place. One other element that was super attractive was because this is a post-processing tool, it's not heavily integrated. We can move platforms and still keep it in place. And that's exactly what we've done. So we had 3CX, we had 3CX calls going to Call Coach. We replaced 3CX with Dialpad. We did exactly the same integration, took the files out, put the metadata on them, put them into the S3 bucket, and we got exactly the same outcomes. So in moving platform, it kept that capability. The coaching was still in place overnight, no problems at all. So that was very attractive, and that worked really, really well.
That's the episode for this fortnight. Stay tuned for the next episode. And for all the latest headlines and happenings in Australian technology news, head over to iTnews.com.au.